Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to the Opentoonz news. Today's first story, we're going to be talking about something that I've been wanting to have in Opentoonz for quite some time. It's made by Turtletooth, and it states in the title, Moving Frames and Keys at the Same Time. Turtletooth states the following.
Every 1 in 100 times I am able to do some magic with key modifiers and move a frame and its key together. There is also a preference to move frames and cell data together, but that only seems to work when moving from column to column, not with the same column.
And then he goes ahead and specifically addresses Man on John and states,
Am I missing anything, or is this a bug?
Man on John goes ahead and responds,
I am familiar with the preference that allows frames and cell data to move together between columns, but not sure about with the same column. When I was testing the flip, I checked that against an earlier release and didn't see that behavior with the same column before. Only when the preference was set and only when moving to a new column. If moving cell data within the same column regardless of preference setting is a bug, it's odd that it only happens once in a while and not every time. I'll try and see if I can reproduce.
Which basically means Man on John is just going to see if the bug is reproducible.
He continues and states, this isn't a bug. If you press Control before you make your cell selections, it will also select keys that will move them when you move the cells. Sometimes you have to press Control or Shift or Alt in the X sheet before you make selections in order for it to work as desired. If you made a selection and then tried to hit Control or Shift or Alt afterwards, the effect you are going for may not work.
Man on John also continues by saying,
However, I just discovered a bug with this feature due to the flip. I can't always move the selection into an empty area within the same column, whereas you could before. I'll find out what's wrong with it and fix it.
Darren T goes ahead and responds,
I can't move frames and keys at the same time. For me, this is the only behavior I want. I never want to move a drawing that has a key on it and not move the key. And I don't think other people do. Also, much of the time when I really need to move keys with frames is when I want to extend a sequence. So I click and drag across multiple columns and want to drag them and all of the following frames and keys down a number of frames. So I can insert a pause or an extra animation. This is such a painful thing to do when you have keys set up at different places on multiple columns.
As my own personal commentary, I would have to say that I do tend to agree with Darren T on this point, especially at the point where he says that there's never any point where he wants to move a drawing that has a key on it and not move the key. It seems like this operation where you have to press Control or Shift or Alt before making a selection and moving that selection and stuff like that. It seems like not only something that a new user would never consider doing, but it does kind of come off as kind of a bad design choice. At least to me, it does. It more so seems like if you want to move a drawing without the key being moved as well, it's at that point you should be pressing Control at that point. It should be the reverse of what it currently is. Of course, this is my opinion. It's not factual doctrine or anything like that, but Opentoonz was initially designed for an all-paper workflow. You would draw out all of your levels on separate pieces of paper, and then you would digitize all of this paperwork into the program, and then most of your interaction with Opentoonz would primarily be with the X sheet. And so having it operate that way, I guess it makes sense, but it just seems to me, especially on the Western hemisphere of the globe, most people are going to be treating Opentoonz with an all-digital workflow. So maybe this is something that needs to be modified. Those are just my thoughts off the top of my head. Behemoth responds with a GIF stating,
You talking about this?
And then he basically shows him selecting a variety of separate frames and moving them about with the keys. Darren T responds,
It is, But on my system, the keys don't move, and I've got the cell dragging option to cells and column data shown at the end of the clip. Right, now I understand that you have to press Control before selecting. I can get this to work, but if I've set the option in preferences, it should move them without pressing Control. Also, the Control option only works on frames you've drawn on. So, for instance, at the end of your clip, when the drawings have been moved to 13, you can click and drag across all columns at frame 10. Then a drag handle appears. If you click and drag that down, it'll move all the drawn frames below it, but not the keys. I think it should move both with that option set as well.
It seems to me that the options cell and column data are cells only and have nothing to do with moving frames. I do not even know what they are for.
Behemoth continues with another GIF and states the following.
Use insert frame or delete frame function to move frames together with the keys.
And the GIF goes ahead and displays how that is accomplished. But I do think that this is something that newer users won't be thinking of doing. I generally think that the interface is currently confusing, and this is the sort of stuff that gets people to think that Opentoonz is too complicated to use. With cutout animations nowadays being somewhat of an industry standard, I mean, there is still a demand for traditional animation, but with cutout animation being the dominant form of 2D animation, being able to move your keys and your drawings at the same time is extremely important, and being able to do so with the least number of complications is absolutely key. And again, this is my opinion, but it just seems like this needs to be simplified in some way. Darren T continues and states,
"That's a great tip, exactly what I wanted. I've just remapped my keyboard for Shift Insert to do so."
And I do agree with Behemoth and Darren T at the same time at this point. This is a great tip, but again, it just seems like this can be simplified in some way, where you can do the operations with the mouse without having to magically know that you need to press Control or Shift or Alt before you make a selection, and then while you move the key and the cell, and without having to know that you have to go into the X-sheet menu and access the insert frame option, or magically know some sort of keyboard shortcut, or assigning some sort of shortcut to it. It just seems like it should be intuitive with the graphic user interface, not necessarily hidden inside of some sort of menu or keyboard shortcut, if that makes sense. It's not something that someone's going to be thinking when they initially open the program and start interacting with it. And the learning curve to a program is pretty important, because if a program is unnecessarily complicated and frustrating to use, people just simply won't use it. So making it as simple as possible for the newer users is pretty important if you want people to use the software. So those are my opinions on this story. I think that this is very interesting read, and there will be a link supplied in the video description below. For the next story of the day, we have Preview Mode displays only a quarter of the canvas. This is a story developed from Behemoth, and he states the following. Very often when I open the preview window, only a quarter of the canvas is displayed. If I zoom out on the canvas, then when it's distant, it completely disappears. If I use Clone Preview, then the clone window works well. Here's a screenshot or video reference. Steps to reproduce this bug. I could not figure out why this happens. It seems it happens randomly and lasts until the end of the Opentoonz session. After restarting this program, there may not be some time, then it reappears, or not. But it happens quite often and at the most inappropriate moment. Behemoth continues by stating, "It is possible that this thing is somehow related related to snapshot and compare to snapshot. I'm not really quite sure what that means, but continuing forward, he continues by stating, it seems that I found a way to reproduce this bug if I switch between rooms when the preview window is active. So he goes ahead and demonstrates that with yet another GIF, and I can completely understand why something like this can be frustrating and such like that. And then Turtletooth goes ahead and states,
confirmed.
So I do hope that this gets addressed. This looks like something that is pretty important. There are times when I've thought about using the preview window. It's behaved rather oddly, and it kind of makes it so that I don't even want to use the preview window, and I just wind up using the preview mode, which isn't always the most reliable thing in the world, but it's better than nothing. A link to the story will be supplied in the video description below. The next story of the day is titled, Pasting Doesn't Paste a Selection Ready to Edit. This story is from Darren T, and it states the following. Issue summary. When you paste a selection onto a different cell, I'd expect the pasted lines to still be selected so that I can move or resize them, but it isn't unless you first draw a selection on the page before pasting. Screenshot or video reference. Steps to reproduce this issue. What I did in the video is create a Toonz raster level. On frame 1, draw a circle. On frame 2, draw a triangle. Go to frame 1, draw a selection box around the circle, and copy, pressing Ctrl C. Go to frame 2 and paste Ctrl V. The circle appears on top and not selected. I then press undo, then undo again to show multiple clicks doesn't help. Then click and drag to create a selection. Paste, and the circle is pasted as a selection, and I can move it to where I need it. Expected result, as above. Actual result, as above. A link to the story will be supplied in the video description below. So the title for the next story is Timeline Height and Keyframe Area Adjustments. So there's been some adjustments to the X sheet and such like that. This pull request addresses these two issues. So basically, there's been an increase to the height of the timeline layers. With the increased height, I also increased the height of the drag bar so the height matches the width of the egg sheet drag bar. Hopefully this will make it a bit easier to target with a pen. Note, this does not mean this is the end of cell or column dragging conversion. It's merely to help for now, in case it takes a while to find an agreeable dragging method. Additionally, the increased height actually makes the timeline a bit easier on the eyes to look at. Narrowed the activation area for keyframe selection. I narrowed the active selection area around where the keyframe icons and white lines are. Coupled with the increased height, this should allow for slightly better click or right-click access to target the cell rather than the keyframe icons or lines with a pen. Update. Added thumbnail to timeline. With the increased height, it makes for a better area to display a thumbnail. Now, here's my 2 cents. I don't have the best resolution on my monitor, so this kind of scares me just a tiny bit in the sense that vertical real estate on the screen is at a premium. I like using the timeline view, I really do, but increasing the height does wind up taking up more real estate on the vertical portion of the screen, meaning there's less area for me to actually draw and view my actual animation. I appreciate that this is adding more functionality to the X sheet and everything like that, but it does scare me just a tiny bit. I do like this idea of thumbnails, but something that I've noticed also is that Opentoonz oftentimes just creates its own automatic thumbnail based off of the first frame that you draw. It would be nice to be able to pick out which one of your levels on that column you want to have as the thumbnail, if that makes sense. But regardless, having a thumbnail to me seems like you're going to be able to make heads or tails of what's actually in your animation without having to fiddle with everything all the time. So I think that there's going to be a lot less confusion with the workflow. So there are a lot of benefits to this change. So I am happy with it. It just kind of scares me a little bit. Now, I did wind up giving a little bit of 2 cents about the thumbnail, how much I would like to pick which one of my levels on a column should be that thumbnail and such like that. That's not a necessity, but sometimes the first frame of an animation doesn't necessarily represent what's on that entire column very well, if that makes sense. So, necessity or not, I'm just talking about a quality of life change that would be nice. I'm sure that this took a lot of effort to implement, and so I am happy that this is being implemented, even though there's a little bit of fear involved with the change. A link to the story will be supplied in the video description below. For the next story of the day, we have Auto Input Cell Number. Window cannot be moved. And this story was posted by Behemoth. Issue summary. This window appears in the upper left corner of the monitor, and I cannot move it to another location because the panel to move the window, if it exists, is outside the access range. Does anyone have the same problem? And you can actually see it right there at the upper left corner of the screen on his GIF here, and I can actually see how this can be really frustrating. Also, I would also like to mention kind of a side note. There was one point in time where I moved one of my notes to the upper left corner, just the note, and every time that I need to type into a note, it's always up there in the top portion of the screen, once again outside of the access range. So I don't know what can be done about that, but it's just something that I'd like to mention. Rodney Baker states the following in response.
I have had that happen in the past, but not recently. To get the window to behave correctly, grab the right side and or the bottom and move it towards the left of the screen in the opposite direction of where we might think we should move it. This should allow the window to be resized and placed normally. Once rescued from that position, I haven't had it reappear there again.
Behemoth states the following. Rodney, I cannot grab it. Bottom, side, or corner, that's the problem. It looks like this is a type of window that cannot be resized. Manonjong responds.
Close all windows except Opentoonz and try cascading the windows on your desktop to see if it will bring it down.
Rodney responds.
Sorry, I can't demo how to do this because I can't get the window into that position to troubleshoot it. I recall it was an elusive problem for me for quite a while. Then one day I just grabbed it and moved it in a different way. Manonjong might have the right idea when he says to close all the windows. All I know is that it can be corrected.
Canero states the following.
Do what Manonjong suggested. Right-click taskbar, cascade windows.
Behemoth states the following. Manonjong, thank you. It worked. This window no longer goes beyond reach. Thank you all. So, it does look like there is a fix for this that we can actually execute on our own without it having to be programmed into Opentoonz. I just wonder if this can actually be done with the notes. And I'm not talking about a note level, I'm talking about just the notes themselves. If you ever get it stuck up there outside of the access range, I don't know. I don't know how to solve something like that. Maybe with the same technique, but I'll just have to try it. For the next story of the day, it's titled No Linux Package on the Download Page. Hi there. Given that I'm already able to download an app image Linux package, which runs on just about any Linux distro out there, I find it odd that there isn't even mention of Linux availability on the download page. I mean, the work to create an app image is negligible compared to the work already done to make Opentoonz able to be compiled and run on Linux. So, can we get some kind of Linux package available to download from the download page along with the Mac and Windows packages?
The Marevna project states the following. I have submitted a pull request to include Linux version on the front page 11 months ago. Shun Iwasawa, can you please take a look and tell about your concerns?
Rodney Baker states the following. Hi all, I might be missing something, but I don't see any open report or issue or pull request for this in the location it reasonably would be submitted. I do see Marevna Project's pull request there. See remarks below. There are several documents that require changing. For instance, the English download page is here. I can see reasons why links to external builds might not be proper, as that might convey that some official support by Dwango or others, but now that an internal AppVeyor release is available, a link to the internal would be certainly ideal and proper. I'm not sure how to approach the support of external builds short of spending time in the Opentoonz forum promoting those. In thinking about this more, perhaps the new HTML page might be created that lists forks, and that page can gain a link via the main Opentoonz download page. The primary issue then would not be one of indicating any degree of support, but would rather be one of keeping the page up to date with the proper link to those that officially support the resource. Not sure what the best way forward is, just throwing out the idea. That page could also append the listing that identifies all of the various efforts to advance Opentoonz' source code. I would think the page then could have a selection of current or active projects related to Opentoonz at the top, linking both to website and GitHub. There's also a Flatpak release.
A link to the story will be supplied in the video description below. For the next story of the day, it's titled, FX Node's Expanded Icon Not Always Visible. Artist Teacher states the following. In OS X 10.11.6 and 10.13.1, with the latest nightly build, the icon set to maximize is not visible in the zoomed out view. Zooming in, everything's fine. And you can actually see what it looks like when it's zoomed out, and you can also see what it looks like when it's zoomed in. And this is actually something that's frustrated me while using the effects schematic as well. I have to be so zoomed in on my effects nodes that I can't actually see any part of the bigger picture. It all just winds up being so abbreviated that I can't actually see what I'm doing, whether I'm zoomed in or not. So, continuing on, this can be a problem when you need to quickly distinguish between lots of nodes on a small screen. And yeah, it's very rare that I actually have my effects schematic maximized on the screen. It's usually just a small window. So, being able to have the ability to actually read your effects schematic easily is pretty important. Artist Teacher also states, now that the icon mode can be turned on and off, I propose that the expanded thumbnail button or option be disabled when icon mode is on. So that is an interesting story, a little bit of a quality of life change that I think that everyone will enjoy. Anyways, a link to the story will be supplied in the video description below. For the next story of the day, it's something kind of unique to my Opentoonz news videos because this isn't actually directly related to Opentoonz. In the video description below, it will lead to a video supplied by JD Quest, who's somebody who covers Krita news and Krita updates and generally teaching people how to use Krita. Now, there's a fundraiser currently being run for Krita in order to see if they can get all of the bugs worked out of Krita so that the performance of Krita can be exemplary and such like that. The only reason why I'm covering Krita is because it is open source and I do believe in this software. It is extremely effective. It's used by professionals and amateurs alike. There's all sorts of great things about this program, and I hope the best for it. Even though I don't use it as much as I did in the past, I have every intention of going back to it. I really do enjoy working with the interface and such like that. It's just that my computer needs to be replaced with a better computer, and anything that can work out some of the bugs and make this program work better, that's excellent. If you guys would like to just watch JD Quest's video talking about this fundraiser, or if you'd like to donate, he has all the information supplied in the link in the video description below. And now we're moving on towards the Made with Opentoonz segment, and it's made by this guy right here. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I've covered a number of his animations, primarily because he tends to have a quality that is rather professional. And so we go ahead and kind of watch the progress of this animation from rough to being more refined and the various effects involved. Now, I asked him if this was made with Opentoonz, and he said that yes, it was made with Opentoonz, but of course later on he wound up using After Effects and such like that, and I really don't blame him. The effects schematic can be a little bit frustrating, especially if you already own Adobe After Effects. But you don't necessarily have to use Adobe After Effects in order to get these results. You can use the effects schematic. I really do like the quality of the drawings. The timing and spacing seems to be fairly accurate. The movements are understandable. They're very readable. And if you guys would like to see this animation directly on Facebook, a link to his Facebook will be supplied in the video description below. And that pretty much concludes it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell. And if you guys would like to see more content from me, feel free to click on any of the videos that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.